Yo, I'll tell you what I want, what I really, really want. So tell me what you want, what you really, really want. I'll tell you what I want, what I really, really want. So tell me what you want, what you really, really want. I wanna really, really, really wanna zig a zig ah.
Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Retro Alliance Gaming. So, today's video is going to be just a little tiny bit different from my last ridiculous video that you guys saw, the one on Shenmue, which was a
the better one!
You know what, Nugget?
What?
You're probably right. No, I'm just kidding. But, yeah, a little bit different than that one. That was a bit informative, a bit goofy, lots of skits, or a big skit involved.
Lots of skit.
Which we love doing, and you can expect more of those in the future. But, you know, from video to video, whatever comes to my mind, whatever ideas I think of, I decide that I feel like I want to tell a story to you guys or something I want to say. And I started thinking about a few things yesterday. I started thinking about like game collections and how people collect them, and it led me to think of one video that I'm going to be doing. And then after I was done with that and I was thinking about my current game collection, what I have behind me, as you can see, is actually there. Well, I'm not trying to be clickbaity, but it was kind of the point of it. Is
my idea, don't blame him.
Yeah, don't blame me, please. But I got to thinking about it, and it reminded me of a story of something that happened to me when I was a teenager. Something, it's a little bit more somber, but it does have a nice little twist, and there are definitely some positive bullet points in there, and I decided I wanted to get real and talk to you about this kind of story. We've heard about my Dreamcast story when I got it, and, you know, Butters, and so let's go ahead and go along with this story. To give a quick synopsis of, the very quick Reader's Digest version of when I was a teenager, I moved around a lot. Basically, my father moved me from this super big city I was in to this town of like 3,000 people. It was ridiculous. I hated it. I didn't get along with anybody there. They just weren't my crowd, and they weren't very accepting. I was always kind of eccentric. And anyways, long story short, I ended up moving to Florida and living with my brother. Now, with my brother, he worked for a company called Filter Queen, and we tend to move around a lot as of that point. I remember we were in Fort Walton Beach, and, you know, I'd go from middle school to middle school and high school to high school. There was a lot of them. So one thing I never got the chance to do is make stable friends, ever. Because there'd be some schools I'd go to where like this one school, I literally went to it for 2 days. And the day I went there, everything was perfect. I met all these amazing people. Like, I think it was like a group of like 7 people. They invited me to eat during lunch, which was a big deal for me at that time. And I made a bunch of friends. The same day I met a girl that ended up wanting to be my girlfriend. We even kissed at the locker. And God, when you're a teenager, when you get that, you know, a kiss like that, or not even a teenager, a preteen, I was 13 in 8th grade. It's such an amazing feeling. And I was like, oh my God, okay, I'm finally at this great school, and I had to move the very next day. So because there were so many different areas and stuff like that, moving around because of, you know, where he worked and stuff, it didn't always work out that way. Because the school prior to that I went to, it was terrible. Like, I'd go to one school and everything would be great, and then I went to this school. I had 0 friends whatsoever. I was so embarrassed that I would walk around during lunch all the time. I would literally just walk around in circles, and even go, and at one point, yes, this is going to sound ridiculous, but I ate my lunch in a freaking stall in the bathroom because I was that embarrassed. Cliche, kind of like an 80s movie, but, you know, and, you know, this isn't telling you this to make you feel bad, but this is how it is. Eventually, you know, eventually I ended up getting to one school in high school. I got to stay at for years, and I made tons of friends. I was popular within the clique of people that I hung out with, girlfriends and everything went great. But like I said, you go from like an inner city on the west side, and then suddenly you're all the way across the United States, and it's kind of more country, really, really country. And it's opposite. You're just not going to get the same kind of welcome from everybody, and kids could be cruel. So, anyways, this one school I went to was great, but we did move. I was staying in Florida for a while, and we moved to Gainesville, Florida. Gainesville is like a college town known for the Gainesville Gators football team. Hoorah, I love the Gators living there. And anyways, when we moved there, I wasn't particularly excited. I wanted to be back at where I was prior to that point, but it was what it was. My brother, I appreciated at the time because he took me in. I didn't want to live in a small town, and and he gave me the ability to be able to be at least in some kind of city or place and take care of me at that time, and that was a fantastic thing that I'm always grateful for. Anyways, so we moved to Gainesville, Florida. I start going to the school. I'm not really made fun of. Nobody's like poking at me or anything, but I wasn't making friends right away. Like a week went by and I was just like, oh God, great, this is going to be another one of those situations where I'm not going to make friends, and this is going to suck, and I'm never going to want to go to school, and all this shit is just going to be terrible. Well, when I was at the school, it wasn't that bad. There was somebody for me to eat with, and there was a person here and there, but not any kind of really close friend. What ended up happening was we moved to this apartment building, and I remember distinctly, it was a nice one, it was decent, but I didn't want to live there because there was a really nice one next door that I wanted, but we couldn't afford it. But nonetheless, we moved into this apartment building, and I remember we got out of school and it was the summer, and I'd walk around there, go to the store, rent movies. There was like a little mom and pop shop you can rent movies from. I used to go there all the time and get B-rate horror movies. And I met these kids. There was these 3 kids. I can't remember their names, nor probably should I remember these kids' names. And basically, they just said, hey, what's going on, man? And I was like, hey, they're like, you new to the area or whatever? I'm like, yeah, I just moved in. They're like, cool, you want to come hang out with us? I was like, sure. So I went, and we'd hang out at their house and, just, shoot the shit, do what kids do. It never felt quite like a friendship exactly. Like, I was always quirky. I was always kind of really goofy, comedic. And when I was younger, I was more shy, so it took me a little bit longer to come out of my shell. You'd meet me and I'd be calm, but then I would end up, exploding once I got to know you. So I meet these kids and we start hanging out, and one day goes by, 2, 3 days when we're hanging out, and I start to notice they don't really feel as much of friends to me. Like I hear them talking behind my back, or sometimes a little bit, or when I would say something or talk about something, they would just laugh at me sometimes for no reason, and I don't know why I continued hanging out with them. I guess I was like 14 and I just wanted friends, and I thought, no, whatever, it's not that bad. I just wanted people to hang out with, what any teenager wants. You want acceptance, you want somebody that you can, somebody you can shoot the shit with. I even remember at one point they invited me to go see to the movies, and weird things started happening where they started acting as if I was just going along with whatever they were doing, and that wasn't the case. I was being myself, but I was also trying to, understand them and have some things in common. But I remember we went and saw Men in Black, and when we left, they were all like, no, what do you think of the movie? And they were like, oh, it's great, it's great, it's great. And I think they were expecting me to say, oh, this movie's great too. Like, oh, I love you because you love it. I didn't. I was like, I thought it was kind of awful. I didn't like the first Men in Black movie at all at that time. I was expecting something different. So I was like, I don't like it. They're like, really? Because we all love it. Are you sure you don't like him? I'm like, no, dude, I thought it was fucking bad. It felt like I was the 4th person in this clique that I wasn't actually part of. And it was these 3 kids, and there was nothing really phenomenal about them. They weren't really that funny. They didn't seem like that great of people, but they were gamers, and I played video games, and I guess that was one thing I had in common, so I could hang around kids instead of just hanging around adults all the time. A lot of it feels sporadic in my head. I believe this period of time maybe was a few weeks, 3 weeks or a month. I remember they invited me to go play pool, and they're like, hey, you want to play pool? I'm like, sure. We got a pool table over at our clubhouse at our apartment, And I went there, and they're just like, okay, but we actually play for money. And I was like, oh. And then they were whispering to each other, and it turned out what they were trying to do is they were trying to get money out of me, see if they could win money out of me. I actually picked up on it. Like, I picked up on the situation, but what they didn't know was I was actually pretty freaking good at pool. So they were just like, yeah, sure, let's go ahead and bet. I'm like, okay, how much you guys want to bet? They're like, I don't know, $30. I'm just like, okay, let's do it. They were laughing, like, okay, they're going to beat me, this isn't going to work out, blah, 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 whatever. We go and we start playing pool, and they go to hit one, and they miss, and it gets to me. I pull out the stick, and I hit it, and boom, knock a color, and boom, another. And as I'm doing this, I look up, and I see them all go like this. They're, like, looking at each other, like, oh shit. I'm like, yeah, motherfuckers. So we kept playing, and I won. And then after we were done, they talked. They're like, okay, you want to double your bet? And I was like, okay, sure, let's double the bet. So they thought maybe it was a fluke or it was luck. Guess what? It wasn't. I actually beat them again. I kicked their ass, and they got pissy. The funny thing is, at that point, because the money was on the table, I grabbed the money. It was mine. They could not take that money away. And then I started noticing some resentment, like jealousy, like, oh, okay, so this kid is just some idiot. He's good at pool, or he's good at this, blah, blah, blah. So it was one of those things where I go back and I talk to my brother and tell him, he's like, yeah, these guys don't really sound that friendly. And I'm like, yeah, I know. So I went out and I talked to them one day, and I said, you know, guys, I don't know if we're going to be friends. It seems like you just make fun of me, you're trying to make money off me. And suddenly they were like, oh, no, dude. Actually, they were at my house, and they started acting really nice, and they're like, I'm sorry, dude, we were just picking on you or whatever, and, you know, initiating you into the group, all's cool. And even though I felt something was off, I went for it. So when they were over, they were asking me, they saw my games, they saw everything I had. I had a PlayStation 1, and I had a ton of games. I had Resident Evil 1, Resident Evil 2, I don't think I had Nemesis at that point, Parasite Eve, Crash Bandicoot, a whole shelf like this big full of PlayStation games back then, which was a huge deal. I also had a Nintendo 64, a bunch of games, and they saw all that, so they'd come over and we would play games. So we'd play games, we would have fun, and that was, you know, pretty much it. We would do trades sometimes. One of the kids traded me a game for a 3DO. I took the system, even though it was dying, because I loved classic systems and it was older, and he just wanted the game to trade in to make more money. He thought he was getting one over on me. I actually got one, you know, over on him doing it that way, and I was like, sure. So we'd go about everything and go about that way. So at this point, I was like, okay, they're just going to be kind of people to hang out with. So they started coming over more often, asking me about games we play, what it was, or if I had any new games or whatever it was I have, and that was pretty much the friendship that was going on. Well, again, you should always trust your gut in situations like this, because basically what ended up happening was, one of these days when they came over, they were checking out the house. They were kind of downstairs. They just wanted to look around, and upstairs, and I was showing them my bedroom and showing them everything else. And basically, we had a front door. When you walked in, there was a living room. There were stairs that went straight up like this. That went to the bedrooms upstairs. And then when you walk back, there was a kitchen on the right side, and there was a sliding glass door on the back. They looked around, and they were kind of checking everything out. But when they came over, they opened the sliding glass door, and they kind of shut it. And it was just like, whatever thing. I asked him what he was doing. They were looking out the balcony. And that was it. They left, and everything was done. Again, I feel kind of bad that I stayed friends with these guys, but, you know, I wanted friends. I was a kid. It was sad that, you know, I wanted people to hang out with, pretty much. So he ended up giving me a call and saying, hey, bro, you want to go to the mall and hang out? We're going to go, I think it was EB Games. And I was like, okay, sure, let's go to EB Games. That sounds like it'd be really fun. The kids kind of manipulated me. What ended up happening was they came in the house, and we took off, and we went to the mall. We went to the mall, but not all the kids came with us. I'm like, where's everybody else? They're like, oh, they couldn't end up hanging out. You want to, we can just go. I'm like, okay. So we walked around for like 45 minutes. So I'm like, okay, I'm bored. We should get home. And he kept kind of pushing it off and pushing it forward, saying, let's hang out more, let's do this more, blah, blah, blah. So I kept going and going. And I started to feel a little bit uncomfortable. And I was like, okay, dude, I'm ready to get home. And that's it. And he's like, okay, whatever, let's go. So we drove home. As soon as I pulled in the front gate, okay, here's the front gate. You got to go all the way down. You got to make a left, and you got to go all the way around. He's like, here, dude, just let me out here. I'm like, well, dude, let me just park. Your apartment's closer over there anyway. He's like, no, dude, I really got to get home, so let me out here. I'm like, okay. So he gets out, and he runs to his house. And I walk in my house. I'm sitting there like normal, like go grab food. And about 10 minutes later, I'm like, you know what? I feel like playing Resident Evil. I go to play Resident Evil, and I look, and I don't see my PlayStation. So I'm frantically looking around. I'm like, where's my PlayStation? I'm like, I had to put it somewhere. So frantically, I'm looking everywhere, and I can't find that. I'm like, wait, where's my 64? I've run upstairs just for some dumb reason, thinking it was hooked up there. I didn't even have a freaking TV hooked up upstairs. And I look all around, and I'm like, something weird. Maybe my brother grabbed it for some reason or something. And I was like, oh my God, my systems are missing. I realized my systems were stolen. That was a huge deal, and those were a huge amount of money. And for a kid like me, we moved around a lot. I didn't have a lot of friends. That was really fucked up. These were worlds and games I got to experience. And God, I loved them so much. And it was one thing, I can come home, and I can sit there, and I could just delve into a game and forget about the assholes and the stupid high school kids or the people fucking with me, and I could just enjoy these moments. And it was like somebody just grabbed both of these worlds from me, and they just took them away. And I was upset. I was really, really upset. I was just sitting there sad about that, thinking how am I going to get a system back to play my games. I had my games in a side cabinet of the entertainment center where you push it open and they come out, and there's a little lock on there. It was open. Every one of my games were gone. These were $50 games, $60 games, every single one, both rows. So I got really panicked, then I cried, then I got really upset, and this was it. All my stuff was gone. And it's like, great, I'm in a new town, don't have any friends, I have these 3 guys who are okay, and all my shit's gone. My brother comes home, I tell him, he's like, oh my God, what's going on? Well, after sitting there for a while, he starts talking to me about my friends, and I told him what was happening. And we came to the conclusion that they had to have stolen it. There is no way they didn't steal it. And then I remembered that when he was in there, before we left my apartment, I remember he was near the sliding glass door, and he was checking everything out. They planned it all. They went in there, they unlocked the sliding glass door, they went out, he gave me a call, he planned on taking me to the mall. They stayed behind, and as soon as we took off, they both went, ran around, jumped, went through the sliding glass door, stole all my shit, and that was it. It was gone. I figured this out by narrowing it down, but at this point, me and Derek were like, holy shit, okay, we're going to have to figure out a way to prove this. Like, what are we going to do? I called these kids, and I'm talking to them. I'm like, dude, my games got stolen. They're like, oh my God, I'm sorry, dude.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. And they're acting it out like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I knew that it was them, so I was planning on to keep being friendly with them so I could figure out whether they have my shit. My brother was gonna go and talk to their mom, but we decided just to wait just a little bit. So I hung out with them the next day, and I just shot the shit. I was like, hey guys, hey, and I'm like, oh yeah, all's cool, whatever. I'm just gonna get the games back. And then I started giving hints because I was a little shit. I'm like, yeah, dude, it's just so weird that it's, right when we took off, like somebody just stole these games. It's so confusing, and then it sucks because you didn't get to see because you had me drop you off out front, and they were like, oh God, dude, yeah, well, I was just in a hurry, and they were making these excuses, and they were frantic, and I knew for a fact at that point that this is what they did, this is what it was. I knew something was going on, so I said, Derek, when I said it to them, they were freaking out. Same day or the next day, I said, dude, you guys are never going to believe this. I'm like, what? I go, I got him. And they're like, what? I'm like, the people who stole it, we got him. He's like, what do you mean? I go, my brother had a camera in the house. I had no idea he had a camera. They're like, are you fucking serious? I'm like, yeah, dude. So he's calling the cops. They have the camera. They're going to get all the information. They're going to have everything. And they're screwed. I haven't seen it yet, but whatever it is, it's being turned into the police. They looked at each other, and their eyes got this fucking big. They were like, oh shit, dude. Wow. We never had a camera. Right afterwards, they're like, oh, we got to go home. That's it. They disappeared. I told my brother immediately, dude, these guys are so guilty, it's not even funny. So when he came home, there's like, that's it. I'm going to knock on their doors. He went to knock on their door. Their mom answered the door. And he was like, hey, these kids, I think, stole my brother's game systems and all of his stuff. And she's like, what? No. Calls him down, and the kid's like, I never stole anything. I wouldn't do anything like that. He's like, really? Let me have a look around. Let me go in there. Go into his room. And he's like, well, I have a PlayStation. He's like, you do? He goes, yeah, but it was, a friend gave it to me, and it's been sold like 3 different times. So he goes up there with his mom, and they pull down this PlayStation. We were looking for the serial number, but we couldn't find it. They take out the PlayStation, and they look at it, and on the back, this idiot, when he knew that he thought I had footage, he went to the back of the PlayStation, and he wrote the years. He was like, I think it was 95 or 96, a name, crossed it out, 97, whatever it was, crossed it out. He put years like other people had owned it, but it looked like brand new ink, and it was dead obvious that it was mine. And we're like, what the hell? And then he sees a Resident Evil 1 and a Resident Evil 2, and his mom's like, where the hell did this come from? And he's like, I got it from friends, and blah, 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 and da-da-da, and like this. And we're like, okay, you turn over all the stuff right now, and we're going to stop all this. You grab every little freaking thing you have and do it. And he's like, I didn't freaking do it. He wouldn't do it. He goes, okay, you're going to make me go to the cops because you don't want to do this. When it was done, my brother did end up finding the serial number for the machine. We looked everywhere. He filed a police report. The police came down. We said, here's the serial number. Here's this. They had me make an inventory list of every single thing I had, and I wrote it down. So once they got to his house, they basically knocked on the door, and they brought the kids out for questioning, and they started talking to them, and kids were acting really, really, really nervous. Their eyes were going back and forth, and they're like, no, we didn't do this. We have a PlayStation, but I got it from a buddy, and this and that, and none of their questions or anything were lining up. Basically, the cop said, look, if you admit everything right now, you're going to get in a lot less trouble than me dragging you off, because you're going to be going to jail, juvie, whatever it happens to be. Anyway, so the cops were basically scaring him, but for a reason that they should be. And this kid ended up breaking down and crying, and I don't feel bad about it at all. He started going, okay, yeah, this happened, oh God. And it wasn't because he was remorseful, it was because he was scared, and he was in trouble, and he was an asshole, basically. So he ends up admitting, he says that he took a bunch of stuff, and so did the 3 other kids. He admitted everything I said earlier about the door, leaving the lock, the plan, everything. So the cop asked him for everything. He had a PlayStation, and he had a bunch of the games, Resident Evil, Crash Bandicoots, and stuff like that. I was still missing quite a bit of games, though. There was probably at least 12 or 13 games, and again, these are brand new. They went to the other kid's house. I don't think they had the Nintendo 64. That was gone because the kids sold it off, but they did have a few more games. So all these kids admitted everything, and these kids ended up getting tons of community service. Their parents were pissed off. They came over and apologized to us, and they were grounded for months, for the whole rest of the summer, and even going from that point. This is where the nice part ends up coming in. So the cops hand deliver all this stuff to me, and he tells me to go through it. So I go through it, and finally I have most of my stuff back, but I'm still missing a lot of it, but it's something. All this stuff is sitting there, and I'm like, okay. And in the end, not only did I get that stuff back, but they had us calculate everything. And when it added up at the end, we didn't get the used price. We got the price it was when we bought it. And I ended up getting a check for something like $1,500 or $2,000. That was amazing. We took the money, we went, I bought everything back, and not only did I get all the stuff back, but because it was cheaper and the cops and all of them were fine with me having the full cost of what it was, we actually ended up having additional money that we saved and were able to put to the side. The summer went on. I actually did end up making one other friend, a guy I hung out with and played games with, and then school time came. And I had to go wait out by the bus, which was out front, and I was dreading it because these kids were there, but then I thought, why am I dreading this? They should be dreading me. My brother's like, if they say anything, if they get in your face and touch you, you punch them square in the freaking face. So I went out there, and they were all standing there, and their heads were down like this, and I'm like, hey guys. I was like, so you guys got anything to say? Anything you want to say to me at all? And none of these guys were willing to even say sorry. I'm like, no, you guys don't want to say sorry or something for screwing me over, the friend stealing all my crap. And I'm like, you know what? Doesn't even matter, because guess what? You're grounded. you're not doing anything during this time. You have to go do all this community service, and I got all my stuff back, and not to mention the fact that you guys are assholes and you have to live with that. So you know what? Screw you. Both of the kids wouldn't even look at me. One of them went to get in my face because he was so pissed off about it, and I'm like, really? After doing all that, you want to get in my face? I go, do you know what? Touch me. Because I have permission to punch you in your freaking face, and don't think that I won't. The kid looked at me, got in my face, and then he walked off. I still kind of wish I would have punched him in his nose really hard, though. It was a shitty situation, but I at least was able to get all my stuff. I got the money to buy the rest of it, and I got back at these kids. These kids who basically were jerks, and they took some new kid who was in a town, and I wanted to make friends, and I made a mistake and stayed friends with somebody that I didn't quite feel right about. And that should tell anybody out there, you know, that you should trust your gut. I mean, it's not necessarily that it's always going to be right every time, but in situations like that, you definitely want to. That's pretty much the whole story. I know it was long. There was actually more details, but I don't want to talk for 50 hours.
Yes, you do.
But this was one little story of something in my childhood. It was a sad situation, but at the end of it, you know, yeah, I didn't have all these friends and all this other crap happened, but I got my stuff.
Justice!
And I got justice. And I was happy about that. And from this point on, I had a friend, and that turned into more, and things ended up getting, you know, a lot better.
You make it sound like it was romantic.
What? Am I? Because it's not romantic. Well,
No, the friend.
What? Oh, no, not a romantic friend. Just a friend. But for me, it was very important because I had somebody to play games with, like Resident Evil, and have fun with. But anyways, guys, that's all I want to say. There's a lot more stories where that come from. I'll be mixing between personal stories and other stuff, but I'm curious, have you guys ever had anything like that happen to you? Do you have any crazy friends that stole your shit or whatever? Any interesting stories? Post in the comments below. I would love to hear about it. Other than that, thank you guys so much for watching my long rant. And as always, my friends, until next time.